Hey there, emerging expat. You're tuned in to Let's Move to Portugal. I'm Victoria from ExpatsEverywhere's podcast, and I have the distinct honor of bringing you, YouTube travelers, and our resident of Portugal experts, ExpatsEverywhere's Josh and Kalie. Each week they'll inspire, they'll educate, and they'll accompany you on your journey to Portuguese residency. This week on Let's Move to Portugal, Za, originally from South Africa, shares his experience of moving abroad along with the pros and cons of living in Portugal. Stay tuned to find out how living abroad has changed his life.
What is up, expats and travelers alike? Welcome back to the Expats Everywhere presents Let's Move to Portugal podcast. Kalie, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Well, now I'm doing well. I would say it was a bumpy.
Fuming earlier.
Yeah, I was so mad earlier. Long story short, because I don't want to bore you, there is a bus strike in Porto today, and I got caught up in that trying to take Sia to school. Normally Josh takes her, but we are in the process of moving apartments, which if you're watching on video, you can see why there's boxes behind us. So Josh had to go to the apartment this morning, and so I took Sia. And normally when that happens, I take like an Uber or a Bolt, but I was doing really well on time, so I'm like, you know what, we can take the bus. And again, long story short, she was late. So I was very upset. So I'm doing okay now, but it wasn't a good start to a Monday morning.
And cringe if you will, but I did bring Kalie a pumpkin spice latte back to kind of be a consolation.
Yeah, that was nice of you. That was nice.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
It's awkward actually walking down the street like holding Starbucks coffees here in Porto. I feel like actually Americans are judged harshly
on
the whole Starbucks thing. But it's really funny because let me just say this. First, if you're new, welcome. And generally what we do in the structure of our videos is we start out with the introduction, which Victoria graciously did for us. And then we move into what we call the weekly welcome, where we tell you how we're doing, what's up. So you kind of get a taste of life here in Portugal. And then we transition into talking a bit about the channel and what's new so you don't miss anything before we get to the main event, which is generally an interview. So back to what I was saying. Starbucks.
Cringy Starbucks, PSL.
We have seen in the comment sections of videos and just conversations that are had among the expat community, how many people cringe about Americans going to Starbucks. However, the past couple of times I've been into Starbucks, I've definitely been the only American in there in terms of like hearing accents.
Or just hearing languages.
Yeah. I hear... Well, for one, the people at the counter are like fluent at English. They're great, and they're generally talking to the other people that are coming in English. But everybody has an accent, like I don't want to say English accent because they're not from the UK, but everyone has this accented from somewhere else English.
Yeah, everyone's speaking English, but it's
as their
clearly their second language.
Yes. So, anyways, what I've noticed is that we are some of the only Americans that we know that we don't even frequent it that much.
No, we actually rarely go.
It's usually for the seasonal drinks. It's like, I want a taste of that, like, and just, remember what that thing tasted like, or like take part in the season, whatever that season is. Like, I'm sure we will have one or two during the Christmas season when they change the flavors over, because they're fun.
Those are the only two times I think we ever do it, or at least I ever do it. I do like a pumpkin spice latte, and you don't just have to get it at Starbucks. There are other places who do it as well. And then in Christmas, I like that peppermint mocha, but they don't always have it here. So honestly, if they don't have it, then I don't know, the gingerbread one, that stuff, I can take it or leave it. I'm really going for the peppermint mocha if that's available.
Yeah, the flavors in Asia were actually a lot more interesting.
Oh yeah, they do some really interesting
cherry blossom.
And,
man, that cherry blossom in Japan is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so enough about Starbucks, but I did want to share that with you because there is this like weird cultural stigma, mainly from Americans, I think, or maybe Americans and Brits, about other Americans. But honestly, like, I saw a ton of younger Portuguese in there. The demographic there is quite young, and it seems to be people that are wanting to go there for a coffee and to get on the Wi-Fi.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So you felt a little weird walking with you were double fisting because I
was double fisting.
Well, you got me a PSL. You got the cold brew.
Yeah.
Something cream.
I'm a sucker for Starbucks cold brew. Yeah, with the cold foam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you felt weird.
But it's my first one of the year, I think, and we're talking about it September right now. So we don't go there very much. Shout out to our favorite specialty coffee in the city, which Starbucks isn't even specialty coffee, but our favorite one is So Coffee Roasters.
Yeah, you'll definitely catch us there a lot more. But anyway, another thing that's going on in Porto too is the haze is really bad right now because there are a lot of fires around us.
Yes.
And it's actually, I don't know, looking outside earlier, it seemed like it was the worst it's ever been since we've lived here.
Yeah,
4
worst
years.
we've seen it. We have seen the red dust, I think is what we call it in English, the red dust from Northern Africa.
Yeah.
Sometimes the winds pick up and it blows over, across to Portugal, and it reaches up here into the north, and you could see it in Porto.
That's rare, though. I think it was just one time since we've lived here.
Twice. It's happened twice,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, since we've been here.
So the breathing, and it's been 4 years since we've been here, so your breathing might be difficult. And then also during these fires. Like yesterday, we were at the FC Porto match, and you could actually see little bits of ash floating through the air.
Yeah, you can definitely see it in the clouds, or it's weird. It doesn't smell nice either, so it's hard because you want to have your windows open. It's nice weather and get a good breeze, but you can't, or else it's just gonna not stink, but it's gonna have a smell, I guess, and it's not good for your breathing.
And we're not saying this to be don't move up in the north or don't move to Porto, because this stuff happens really all across the country, and actually the fires are more happening right around Aveiro right now. So it's blowing up from Aveiro, which is southeast of here.
And we have a lot of experience about this because we used to live in Singapore, and there was almost a season where we'd get this type of haze. But that was caused by the slashing and burning of Indonesia and it blowing over to Singapore. So it's the same thing where it is fire burning that's blowing somewhere. So that's how but it's much worse there, and it goes on for longer. Here it's not as long. But it is tough because they have to deploy a lot of firefighters. They have to get the planes out with the water, and it's dangerous for them as well. So hopefully it passes soon. They can get it under control.
That's right. Okay, so channel update. We put out a video over the weekend that was an interview with a lady named Kathy. And Kathy gave her impressions of the prices and lifestyle that one could have in Cascais. So check out that video. Really, if you're interested in moving to Portugal, she dropped some serious nuggets on, for example, taking a language course and when that should be done, and maybe she did it the wrong way. So check that out, as well as giving some general cost of living parameters and talking about the lifestyle that one could have there and just in Portugal. And then there's been nothing else to go out. We did film an amazing property last week. We got invited to film a property that had a Douro River view. Beautiful. And it's been, it was stunning. And it's been a while actually since we've done one of the property tours. So we were like, let's do that. Let's go check out a property and film it and walk through and see what you get for almost $800K.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. And then another interview that we had in Cascais of a lady, Nicole, who decided to didn't know she was going to, but decided to buy a business. So starting a business with, she has a family in Cascais. There's that.
Those videos haven't come out yet, but they're in the works.
Yeah.
We're editing them now. We're trying to get them out. But this week we're talking to a South African that we met only about 2 months ago, maybe three months ago. But we've actually become friends because our daughters adore each other and they love playing together.
Yeah.
So it's amazing getting to meet the families of the kids at our daughter's school. And that's been a very easy way to start making friends. And it's
been fun because just obviously culturally it's different because they're South African. Obviously we have the main thing in common of language, so we can
English.
Communicate very easily. But we love South Africa. I have a lot of South African friends, so it's fun to meet them and talk about different cities there and different foods. We had a braai with them, which was fun. Which is
a barbecue.
Yeah, and they know a South African butcher here that can do biltong and stuff. So if you haven't heard of any of these things, you got to look them up.
Which is like turkey.
It's so good. So it's kind of fun to get back into that. And so they're a really nice family. So Josh speaks with Zá,
which is confusing for us because in Portuguese, the name Zé for José is commonly used. So when we first saw his name, we thought it was Zé.
Because it's Z-E.
Yeah.
But it's pronounced Zah.
But yeah, had a great conversation with him where we really made a lot of kind of comparisons between the expectations that he had and the reality that existed when he moved here, because he does have Portuguese roots. So there's that. We know that there are plenty of people with Portuguese roots that are now looking to either move back to Portugal or to move for the first time to Portugal. I shouldn't say move back, because some people have the roots but have never lived in Portugal. We talk about financial things, the differences between security in his home country and then also Portugal, which I think there are some Americans out there that live in places where they don't feel as secure. So you might really resonate with, how he felt living in South Africa versus the life that he lives here. We talk about a greater appreciation for work-life balance. We talk a lot. So
you don't have to be South African or, have visited there or from there or anything to get good information about it, because it's his expat experience. So there's going to be a lot of similarities actually for Americans that we feel when we move here.
I found a ton and would touch on those when I felt it was appropriate during the conversation. So let's get to that chat.
Before we get to that chat, though, I just want to throw out, I don't think he mentions, but he is a really good tattoo artist. So
yes.
I don't know if you guys even talk about that, but I did want to say he does amazing tattoos, and he does that here in Porto too.
Yeah, we don't actually. So he said that he didn't feel like it was kind of the place to be throwing that out there, but
I'll throw it out.
But yeah, you'll throw it out. So he is known as a tattoo artist and was able to pick up actually he travels a lot in Europe to do tattoos. So that is kind of mind blowing, and I think tattoos have moved past being taboo, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're art. What he does is art.
What he does is definitely art.
Color shading and everything. It's impressive. I couldn't do it, but
yeah.
I'm not good at art anyway. But I just wanted to throw that out. If you're in Porto, he's a good one.
He is a good one.
Okay.
We'll put his information in the description section or show notes, depending on how you're consuming this. But let's get to it. All right, before we get started, let's talk about this week's sponsor, Green Ocean Advisors.
Well, I think the world right now can feel a little chaotic, but that doesn't mean that your finances have to, because I think when your finances feel chaotic, everything is just out of whack, right?
Yep, and Green Ocean Advisors will help you put together a plan to weather all those financial storms that may come your way. It's a little tricky whenever you make a move. You're often asking yourself questions like, is it time to invest in AI? What's up with that?
Ooh, AI, that's a good one. Or how about crypto? I think a lot of people talk about crypto or Bitcoin when it comes to Portugal because of the taxes. So is that for you?
Maybe closer to home is, should I sell my home before moving to Portugal, or should I rent it out?
Everyone's situation really is different, so it's good to talk to a financial advisor about your specific portfolio before you make the move, or even if you're already in Portugal.
Now, click the link in the description section below or in the show notes, depending on how you're consuming this right here. And be sure to click the one that gets you a free 15-minute consultation. It's specifically to Expats Everywhere. Thank you, John, for that. Now, on to the show. Zah, thanks so much for joining me today. I look forward to digging into chatting about your experience moving to Portugal and really what you've felt being someone who has Portuguese roots and is reconnecting to that. And if there's any awkwardness behind that, because we do have a decent amount of viewers that do have Portuguese roots that might feel like coming back into the country feels a little strange for them. So first, tell us where you're from and why you decided to move to Portugal.
So I'm originally from South Africa. I was born and grew up in South Africa, Johannesburg. You know what? The choice to come back to Portugal was something that was a little bit more work focused at the time. It was about call it 10, 11 years ago. So I had left South Africa and wanted to venture further into the European market with what I do, and Portugal, obviously having roots there, was kind of the obvious choice for home base. Also having some family and stuff, I figured it's probably the most logical choice to try and get integrated. The move over was tough, tough to say the least. I think the biggest thing is the culture shock, because for me it was, even with being half Portuguese and having Portuguese family, the Portuguese community within South Africa is, I found out, very different from the community in Portugal itself. So from the way people speak to, those sort of little quirks and mannerisms and stuff, that was very, very, kind of tough to kind of navigate around and to get used to.
Do you have any examples, like off the top of your mind, that were very different in terms of being culture shocks?
Um, yeah, look, I think one of the biggest ones for me was in within I think just South Africa's culture as a general, but with the Portuguese culture in South Africa, um, the community is very kind of like stand together. You know what I mean? So if you had to come across another Portuguese person in South Africa, you would almost be kind of taken in straight away. You know, they'd be like, "Oh, you're Portuguese. Oh, I'm Portuguese. That's great. Like, let's be friends." um,
Yeah.
and everybody will kind of help everybody out and stuff like that. Whereas I found initially coming here, that was a huge shock for me with, the culture's not the same here.
Mm.
You don't, I found like you don't just get welcomed in as easily. It's something that's a little bit more, I don't want to say like tricky, but it is something that, if you're not being from Portugal originally,
Mm.
it was something that's a bit more tough. It's people aren't as quick to help you as what I'm normally used to.
Yeah. Well, do you find that South Africans in Portugal are like, hey, you're South African, come on? Because Americans do that. Like when you find out someone's American or just a native English speaker, it's like there's an openness to just kind of put your arm around someone when they're new.
Yeah, 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 definitely. I think it is the one time with being in Portugal where I found like I've been connected to more South Africans than the entire time I lived in South Africa. Uh, just because of the fact I think it's exactly what you said. It's like when and not just South Africans, but anybody that's if you hear English or anything like that, especially when it comes to other Americans or British or Australians even, it's something that we're more familiar with. Whether it be from like sort of movies, television, just South Africa having a pretty broad sort of spectrum of people as well. So, you probably have encountered Americans or something like that within South Africa as well. So I think that definitely does, within the expat community, I think it definitely does make a little bit more connection. You know what I mean? It's the minute you hear that, your ears perk up and you kind of think like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I know what they're saying, like,
I know that.
yeah, I know that. That's familiar. So, and yeah, I have found that, I'm, I don't know if everybody else has, that's moved here has felt the same thing, but, I have felt very much that, because of how that culture shock is, and I think it is like that for a lot of people, I feel
Mm.
like the expat community has become, or is rather a lot more open to, helping each other out and kind of, if you hear somebody's not from Portugal, you're more likely as an expat to be like, oh, like, that's, your accent's really interesting or whatever it is. Like, you're obviously not Portuguese. Like, where are you from? And, you can kind of create conversation and, create different sort of connections with people, which I find is here has been a lot more open versus, any time I've been in South Africa at least.
This is definitely something that we found as we've lived abroad in a variety of places where the community, the expat community or the foreign community tends to stick together. So you
Yeah.
do find like that happening. But then on the other side of it, what you're saying with your experience being a South African of Portuguese descent, coming back to Portugal, let's say, we found in Korea specifically where we knew a bunch of Canadians that were Korean Canadian. And when they would go to Korea or when they arrived in Korea, they weren't Korean enough for the Koreans. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you're still a foreigner, or you look Korean, but why don't you speak Korean as well as Koreans do?
Yeah.
Therefore, you're weird, like you're maybe like uneducated because you can't speak well. It's fascinating. So like those people felt like a little bit like outsiders, or their experience maybe was made worse because there was like higher expectations of what the place was going to be, and they in a sense let down the local population and then
Yeah.
also let themselves down, which is fascinating. Like that phenomenon to me is just bonkers. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, it's nuts.
So for you with the adaptation, did you feel like you had a lot of I don't know, a lot of expectations with the move and like what it was going to be like from a reconnecting with Portugal stance? Like leaving maybe security and economics out of it for a moment. We'll get to that in a
Yeah.
second. But in terms of like expectations emotionally or what it would be like, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I think there was a little part of me that, had some sort of expectations, as to what it was that I was going to kind of be coming to. And I don't know if that's because of the fact that, with having ties to Portugal and having family and stuff that, um, it had built up some sort of expectation in my head just because that's what I was used to being around. Um, but man, I don't know if I would say it was a letdown or anything like that. It was definitely different from what I was expecting. That's for sure. Some things for the better, some things for the worse. Um, but I think anytime that you moving to a different country, you're moving to somewhere where things work differently. The people, the culture is different. Um, I think there's always going to be that little bit of adapting that you need to kind of do. You need to kind of uh, I think figure out a balance between like expectation and reality,
Yeah.
and try and meet it somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean? I think there's some things that you might have to kind of give up and sacrifice what what you were expecting or what it was that you're kind of hoping to get,
Yeah.
um, and try and take in, you know, sort of how things are as well, especially because of the fact that you are moving to somewhere that people are already living and doing
Yeah.
things the way they do. I mean, it's
Yeah.
you need to kind of somewhat adapt. But yeah, the expectation, there was definitely expectation that when I got here was kind of some parts of it shattered a little bit, and then
Yeah.
other parts of it kind of lifted up where I was like, oh, okay, well, this is kind of cool. This is not too bad.
Okay. Well, Kaylee's a big fan of having zero expectations when she goes into places, and the reason
She's
is because
smart.
then she can't be let down.
Yeah, she's smart lady, that.
So I got a question before we move to like the security and the financial aspect of things.
Yeah.
How's the pastel de nata in South Africa? Like, is that a thing in the
I,
Portuguese community?
I mean, it is a thing. If you know where to get it, you can get
Okay.
some good ones. But
Okay.
I've had some pretty
Ranklins.
yeah. I'm trying to find like a very PC word to use for it, but ones that are not so good. That's
Okay, and what about here in Portugal finding national treasures from South Africa like biltong?
oh man, it's you know what? I think even if it was rubbish biltong, it would still be great because there's those certain things that you just don't get that when you do get it, it's just you just savor it. But having said that, there are definitely places that are really really great. There's a place in Povo de Varzim that makes really good biltong and their chili sticks. Oh, chili sticks are to
Yeah.
die for.
So real quick, what are chili sticks and biltong for the listener that doesn't know?
All right, so oh man, we hate this comparison, but I'm going to try and use it because it's the easiest way to explain.
I
So
think I know what you're gonna
especially,
say.
yeah. So especially for Americans, it's like it's the concept is kind of like beef jerky,
Yeah,
but
but it's
it
better.
is. Yeah, thank you. I don't know what.
No,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's really good, right? So it's I mean it's dried out meat, that is seasoned and everything very much to like a South African taste. The spices and stuff that are used is, I think, kind of something that is very much South African and not really a taste you're going to find anywhere else. Um, and they come in various forms, obviously. So it's, you can either get, just like a giant big piece that you can sort of gnaw away on, or get them in thin slices. Chili sticks are more sort of exactly what the name is. It looks more like a twig off of a tree, if I can say it like that.
It's like what a Slim Jim should be, if you're familiar with the Slim Jim reference.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Slim Jim reference. Yeah, I never had one, but
Don't.
Yeah,
Stick to chili sticks. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'll stick to the chili sticks.
All right, so let's chat a bit about the move and in terms of the expectations of what kind of like financial difference is there that you noticed, and then also security, as many people are moving to Portugal because Portugal ranks so highly in terms of global ranking of security. What have you found? And I know that like we both come from places that could be categorized by some as dangerous. Certainly, I think South Africa more than the U.S., sorry to say, but in terms of being more dangerous. But, what have you noticed in terms of both of those things, the financial aspect and the security aspect?
I mean, look, I think for the financial aspect, it's that's a tough one because it's within South Africa, and I mean, especially with having built up the reputation and the experience and gaining all the clients and stuff that I did over the years. As far as like a salary is concerned, I was doing really well in South Africa, like doing a really good salary that, most people wouldn't be having. But because of the economic status of the country and just, it's unfortunately, it's just declining rapidly, and it's kind of on that downhill sort of trend now where it's just any time of it coming back is really slim, and maybe not within my lifetime either. So on that side of it, it's looking at it like, even though it's doing well in terms of the rand, the minute you put that into the global sort of currency, it just you're not holding any water. It's like your rand doesn't get you that far, So that's kind of where my thoughts were on, at least on with coming over to Europe side, is being able to earn euros, even if I'm not making as much as what I was in South Africa. The value of it is always still going to be more, So I could be making 3 times less than what I was making in South Africa, but the value of it is, could be at the same or possibly more, depending on, how bad things get financially and economically within South Africa. And that's always like a fear in the back of your mind, you know what I mean? Especially with having a family and stuff like that. I think for my daughters, like in the future, if things keep declining that rapidly, what is it going to be worse by the time, she gets older and she needs to start working? So yeah, I think it's that for me is the biggest part that kept playing on my mind with that, is just like, trying to substitute, like, do I substitute like, or do I give up my comfort and, what I know and I'm doing well here, but I got to try and think long term with it. I got to try and think maybe a little bit further than myself. And that for me is where it becomes a bit of a no-brainer. I think it's definitely been a little bit more difficult because it's almost starting, at least within what I do. It's been having to start from the ground up again. So it's, basically hitting that reset button, and having to go through the grind again, which is always tough. But I think the payoff, at the end of the day, I feel like will be a lot more worth it than, having stuck in the sort of financial part that I was in.
I totally understand that. I mean, going back to the exchange rate thing that you were mentioning, it's really kind of, I use the word funny because it's the only word that pops to mind, although it's not humorous, but it's funny to me that many Americans, especially now, like are having a real hard look at the exchange rate between the US dollar and the euro. And they're like, whoa, it's moved to like 1.11, 1.12, although it's just dipped back to like 1.1 again. But they're concerned about that fluctuation and what the US
Yeah.
dollar is doing. However, Kaylee and I moved in October of 2020, and there was a good 6 month period of time, maybe even longer, maybe it was 9 months, where the currency exchange was like 1.2 to 1.23. So we had fixed our budget in a certain way that it's like, okay, we know that when we're buying a euro, we're going to have to spend $1.22,
Yeah.
and what that does for our budget. And then the dollar got stronger to the euro, and it's like, wow, we have so much more money because the exchange rate changed by like 15-20% at one point.
Yeah.
And it was at par, and then it's dropped back down to this 1.1. But a lot of people moved when it was at par. It was on parity with each other, and now
Yeah.
they feel like their money's devalued, so they're
Yeah.
panicking. But it's nothing like the devalue that the rand, the South African rand, is having to all
Yeah.
global currencies.
Yeah.
So
No,
I
for
really,
sure.
I really feel for you on that, and I'm sure it's a major concern among the South African community. And there's even restrictions, from what I've heard, on how much money you can take from rand and put into euro, like convert, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah. Yeah.
the government restricts.
Yeah. The government does restrict them. I mean, um, look, I mean, I don't think the government obviously is like overly happy with a lot of the wealth leaving the country. It's like a lot of people who have means to get out, or have the funding to get out, are getting out.
Yeah,
At least the most majority of them, not everybody, but the majority. And it's from the government point of view, if I have to try and be blunt about it, like South Africa's government is, I want to rank it right up there with probably like some of the most corrupt in the world.
mm,
So whatever they can do to keep that money there, that's what they will do. Um,
yeah,
and I think it's definitely what makes it tough. I think especially for South Africans who still have a lot of investment tied into South Africa that are, trying to get that out. I think that does become a huge concern for them. With the further down the rabbit hole the economic status of South Africa goes, the more money they lose, and rapidly as well. I think the rand, if I'm not mistaken, is sitting around the 20 rand to the euro mark at the moment.
yeah,
I mean, that's quite insane. So um, yeah, the more difficult they make, the more difficult it is for you to get your money out and to try and safeguard yourself, get your savings over. The more stressful I think it becomes for a lot of people.
yeah. It's a snowball effect.
Yeah.
So taking a look at security, was that one of the reasons that you wanted to leave? Was that like in the thought process?
For me, that was the biggest one. That was
Okay.
definitely that was putting everything else aside.
Mm.
Security was definitely the number one thing.
So
I,
Portugal was the place because of roots, but it was also like, let's get out of South Africa because of the security situation. And oh, by the way, Portugal has high levels of security
yeah,
like that.
it's it's like those are things that all kind of fell in place. You know what I mean? It's
Okay.
having sort of ties here was obviously the first and easiest choice, but the bonus was the fact that like the safety aspect was, the uh, safety here is just, especially I think coming from somewhere like South Africa, it's just next level. Um, there's so many things that I feel people that live in countries that are safer, like Portugal, sometimes take certain things for granted. You know what I mean? And simple, what seems like stupid everyday things. Being able to walk out of your house, walk down the street to go to a shop, for example. It's something you can't do in South Africa. Um, it's at least not in a lot of places. You need to drive everywhere because you can't walk back home with groceries for the most part because, the possibility of having somebody rob you for your groceries is
always there. And there's certain things that I found over time of being here, especially with having a daughter. I mean, that became my biggest concern. Was you start, uh, after a while, you start realizing how scary it is that, uh, you become conditioned almost to, that sort of danger and that level of violence and stuff where it's just, you don't think much of it when you're in it. It's just how life is. And, the minute, we moved here and after being here for a little while, started realizing like, hang on, this is not normal, like, we shouldn't kind of, live that way, like here, I'm able to take my daughter to a park if I want to and not have to worry that, somebody's going to try and kidnap my kid or that we're going to get shot and killed because somebody wants to steal, a few notes that might be in your wallet or the shoes on your feet. Like, it definitely, the safety aspect is, everything else could be taken away as long as I still had that safety aspect here, and it would still be an easy choice for me.
Oh, wow. Okay. How long did it take you to, or maybe do you still have thoughts of like that concern that you had in South Africa, and then you kind of snap out of it and you say, wait a second, I'm in Portugal?
Yeah, no, like, yeah, that's embedded in you. Like, if you're born and grow up in South Africa, it's something that'll stay with you forever. Look, to some degree, I'm not necessarily like sorry that, I've kind of come from that, with having come from a place that has, I mean, I think we have, seven, if I'm not mistaken, seven, of the most dangerous cities within the top 15, so
Ooh.
it is a really dangerous place. And, I think with, what I'm appreciative, strangely enough, about that is, um, it's, it helps you, especially in a place like Portugal, not get yourself into a stupid situation. You know what I mean? Like you have that, like that South African instinct that kicks in where you can tell straight away, like, "Ooh, okay, this is something that I need to watch for," or, kind of always having, because I mean, in South Africa, even if you drive, you can't drive with your windows open and, just kind of be like la-di-da and sort of off in the clouds.
Head in the clouds, yeah.
Yeah, you need to be watching at all times, especially when you stop at traffic lights and stuff. You generally are watching every side mirror, your rear view mirror. You're watching everybody on the roads, waiting for that something to happen, for somebody to do something, because when it happens, it's quick. And I found like here, although I'm a lot more relaxed now, after a few
I was going to
years.
say, it must be mentally exhausting.
Yeah. It's, once you hear, you realize how mentally exhausting it is. That's for sure. When you're in it,
Okay.
you're just in it, so it doesn't matter.
It's
But
normal. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of everyday life. But, yeah, I am still, I do like the fact that I am that aware, though. You know what I mean? It's something that's, like I said, it's, even if I'm driving here, I feel like the chances of, me getting into a tough situation like that where, it's kind of where you have to hit that fight or flight, I feel like you can somewhat almost avoid that, to some degree because of the fact that, you're normally having to be so aware of your surroundings and constantly watching everybody and stuff. So it's, it's something that's kind of, made life feel a lot more relaxed here. I think maybe even more relaxed than, what some people who are used to it feel.
Okay. So you've moved with a young family. So you have your wife and your daughter, and you've been here for a couple years because you had your
Yeah.
daughter back in South Africa, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been, like I said earlier, I've been in Portugal for about like sort of, I think it's around 10, maybe going on 11 years now. But because of my, what I do for a living, I sort of bounced around and, would be all over Europe, sometimes going to the States, and then back to South Africa because of my clientele there. And back in South Africa is where I ended up meeting my wife. And we had started speaking, the more serious we got, the more we started speaking about like, her coming over with me to Portugal, because obviously I was not going to be staying in South Africa. It's not where my home base was anymore. So we had started getting things moving, kind of getting paperwork, ready and finding out what it is that we need for her to come over. And within that time, we ended up having our daughter. And as we had our daughter, COVID hit, and then we were stuck. So we, for a long time, I want to say, I think like the first, maybe even half a year to a year even, it was really tough to fly out of South Africa with the whole COVID thing because, South Africa was on a no-fly list for a lot of countries. And then the minute we could get that opportunity when, they kind of opened it up, and Portugal told me, like you are now allowed to come over with your family, then yeah, that's when we got out. So we've been here for, I think going on 3.5 years now.
Okay, nice. And the settling in process for your family, how's that been in terms of your wife doesn't have Portuguese roots? I assume that your daughter wasn't learning Portuguese back in South Africa. So what's that been like?
It's had its challenges, definitely. There's, I think it's once again, it's culturally for my wife, I think it's been definitely a lot tougher.
Okay.
She's coming from, just a South African background, no real ties to Portugal in any way. And even within the Portuguese community in South Africa, the little bits that she had been exposed to are still so different from here. So I think culturally, so culturally it's, for her, I think has definitely been a huge challenge. There's a lot of things that's, I think sometimes it's not even culturally. If I think about it, it's sometimes simple day-to-day things, like not speaking the language. Obviously it makes things really daunting. So something as simple as going to a grocery store, becomes, like a mammoth task. It's something that, she kind of needed to psych herself up for and, prepare 2-3 days in advance for, I'm going to have to try and communicate with someone. Having certain things be completely different from South Africa with the, like having self-service checkout tools here. That would never happen in South Africa because it would just be a free for all. But, trying to figure out simple things like that, we're just not used to, I think for her has been super, super tough. For my daughter as well, it's, I think less tough for her because of, her being so young.
Age. Yeah.
But it still comes with its challenges. I think with the home life and all the rest of it, there's definitely still, even at a young age of, Zara's almost 5 now. Even at that young age, I found out, I don't know if you guys agree, but there is that difference in sort of mannerisms and certain cultural things that they're obviously experiencing at home.
Yeah.
And when they get to school or whatever it is, it's you can tell the difference between them, between local kids and expat kids. So I think even for my daughter, I think there's been some challenges. The language thing I think is a little bit of a challenge for her, but with them being young, most kids are like sponges, so she does take it in relatively quick. It's just I think sometimes because it's not really spoken at home, because my wife speaks English and Afrikaans, like it's not an everyday home routine for her, and I think sometimes I can see it's maybe a little bit shy or self-conscious with speaking Portuguese because it's like, oh, we don't speak Portuguese at home, we only do that at school. So when we're out and about and stuff, if people speak to her in Portuguese, a lot of the time she'll just kind of like shy away and stuff. So I think there is challenges for even her.
I have a sneaking suspicion, at least with Valencia, our daughter, that she feels more embarrassment speaking Portuguese in front of us versus when she's either at school or she's at a playground and just like speaking with either adults or other kids. and we're not present. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think I agree with you on that one. Yeah, because I mean, I don't know about Valencia, but I've caught our daughter like if she's just playing by herself, there'll be times where she'll switch into Portuguese, and it's
Yep,
obviously maybe reenacting school things or something. I'm not sure, but
exactly.
yeah, the minute we walk in the room, yeah, you're right. It's the minute we walk in the room, it's like, go away, Dad, I'm playing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so.
exactly. Exactly. That's okay. So that's cool. I wanted to ask you, and maybe I'm putting you on the spot here, but what are some tactics that you've done to support your wife in this process? Like, are there any things that you've kind of like mentally said, all right, I'm going to help her in this way or support her in this way?
Um, yeah, look, I think in the beginning, especially, I think my biggest thing was because I have a little bit of Portuguese background, obviously, and I can,
You do? I've
although
heard you.
yeah, although not perfect, I can speak. Um, so I think for me, the beginning part of it was kind of, I'm gonna take the lead on things, like
Mm,
uh, uh, whenever it comes to dealing with people and, even if it's the stupidest, smallest little things, um, I would take the lead on it and, kind of, have certain things that I knew are going to be repetitive kind of things, going to, supermarkets and dealing with the cashier. There's going to be set certain things that they're going to say, um, that's it's going to kind of be routine almost. And I would have her come with me, and I would just be the one that constantly would talk, and I would use the same uh, sentences and the same wording every time I went. So there could be something that became like almost like a parrot style for her, constantly hearing that same repetitive sort of thing. Didn't matter how a person that I was dealing with would ask it, I would answer it constantly in the same way.
mm,
Or if I asked for something, I would use the same words all the time. Uh, and slowly over time, I could see like my wife start kind of grasping and, picking
it
up
was
on those
clicking.
sentences that I was doing. Yeah, it's like, kind of memorizing what it was that I was saying. And then from hearing the interaction with the other people would start being able to put two and two together, going like, oh, okay, that's okay. I understood that. Like,
Mm,
I kind of knew that, this part would be used there. Um, that's, I think one of the biggest things I did, at least for her with, trying to just be able to go out by herself and do simplistic things, to not make
mm,
her feel like she was kind of stuck and housebound, like a prisoner
yeah,
within the house. Um, and slowly over time, I would go with her and then, kind of tell her, especially if we got to know
you
like
do it.
certain cashiers, it'd be like, like you try today, like this is, just say this. And obviously if she got stuck, I'd either help her or we were lucky enough to have, some people that got to know us and got to know that she was learning, I'd maybe tell them like, oh, well,
Brilliant.
she's trying to learn Portuguese. And, yeah, we'd have people that were nice enough to kind of have that patience to, try and give her the time to figure it out.
Well, good
I
on
think,
your wife and good on you for that patience as well. But good on your wife for sure, because I think that so many people that don't know another language when they get in that situation and they have a partner who does will just completely switch off and be like,
yeah,
all right, you do the thing. But the
yeah,
fact that she kind of stayed in there and stayed focused and was switched on while the conversations were being had, she was able to learn by osmosis, if you will. But
yeah,
that's
exactly.
fantastic.
And I mean, I think it is a really important thing, you know what I mean? I think from both sides, I think, if there is, um, somebody, at least within, our sort of situation where I do have a bit of knowledge of the language and, um, a little bit of the culture and stuff like that, I feel like important on my end to try and help her with that. And then obviously from her side to want to be able to put in that effort and that time to learn and, somewhat kind of, get a little bit more into, the language and the culture and stuff and try and integrate a little bit more. Um, because I think it helps just with everything. I mean, if I look at my wife now, um, anytime, doctor's appointments or anything need to be made, she's quite happy to, she'll be the first one to jump on it and be like, oh, we need to get, this appointment made. We need to do this. Oh, we need to contact, Centre Sahud. We need to do whatever. Like she's kind of on it now. And I think also what's something that's, I think in the beginning really tough to get over, but it is for, hopefully for a lot of people, something that eventually, clicks is, you're going to look like an idiot. You know what I mean? In the beginning,
Yes.
you're going to look like a complete fool.
Yep.
And I think like for my wife, it was the minute she got past that thing of like, oh, you know what? I actually don't care if I look stupid or if I sound stupid or, people kind of look at me funny or laugh at me because I'm going to have to go through that to learn. It's the only way to learn. I need to make the mistakes in order to learn from them. And yeah, that kind of completely opened up her world here, it's made her a lot more outgoing, getting to know people and, kind of grew from there.
Yeah, nice. All right, so switching gears, you all live in Porto, which is a city that is becoming a bit more expensive. So let's talk a little bit about finances here. How have you found life here in Porto over the past couple of years? Do you feel like inflation is hitting? What are expenses like for you guys?
Oh yeah, no, it's man, if I have to compare it to, 5, 6 years ago,
Mm,
it's definitely gone up. I think it has become a lot more difficult than what it was. I think, even I mean, it's obviously got to. There's a lot of factors that come into it, right? So it's like the wars, it's COVID, it's all these things, and different political struggles all over that will affect things. But um, I feel like uh, there are other aspects to or other reasons for at least within Porto as to what's made things more difficult. One of the biggest ones for me, I think, definitely is the housing. The housing has become a
yeah.
lot more insane compared to what it used to be. It's if I have to even just take friends of mine who are local Portuguese, they have been born and grew up and lived here their whole lives. Um, they about 6 years ago had moved into a 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom space, like a really nice apartment with a really massive balcony. And I think they were paying, man, I want to tell you that I think it was like 350 euros a month.
Okay.
And now they wanted to move, just move to a different area, and they can't find anything for the exact same size of what they got, and maybe a little bit smaller. They can't find anything for like less than
1,000.
€1,200.
Yeah.
So it's and I mean that's not even within Porto itself. We're
Yeah.
talking about a place in uh, you know probably about 40 minutes drive out of Porto. So that has definitely been the most difficult thing. And then I think because of the fact the one downside and the one negative that I have to say about Portugal, unfortunately, is it still has the lowest minimum wage within the whole of Europe, if I'm not mistaken, and by quite a bit as well. So you got like the average person, at least local, um, earning what is it around the 780 mark a month, and housing is already anywhere between 1,000 to 1,600 euros per household. So, you got two people working that are earning minimum wage. It makes life, I think, a little bit tough, so, and then groceries and stuff on top of that. Yeah, inflation has definitely hit. Things are a little bit more expensive than what they used to be. So I think depending on what your financial status is, where you're earning, I think if you're earning outside of Portugal, you probably got a much better chance of not feeling it that badly. But if you're earning locally and working, for a Portuguese company at least, I think it's going to make your life a little bit more difficult. It's definitely going to be a bit tougher.
Right on. Yeah, so I just pulled up that stat in terms of the minimum wage, and it definitely rings true if we're talking about Western Europe. Um,
Yeah,
it honestly looks like Portugal is kind of on par with some of the countries that you'd find in both Central and Eastern Europe.
yeah,
Around it would be like Poland, Lithuania, Greece,
yeah,
Croatia in terms of minimum wage.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean it's pretty wild for sure. Fortunately, I think a lot of Portuguese own properties, and therefore that's a little more set than them having to participate in the wild
yeah,
rental market that is out there right now. Because, like you said, I mean, when you said that your friends were renting something for 350 a month, and then they were trying to move, it's like, oh goodness, I mean, they were going to pay 4x what
yeah,
they were paying, and that's just not possible. Like, so you get
yeah,
stuck,
exactly.
like you have to stay there essentially.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so you guys live in a two-bedroom, semi-detached house, right?
Yeah. So we stay in a two-bedroom semi-detached with a little outside garden area, stuff like that. We were originally in apartments, so the
Mm,
place we were staying in before this was a bigger apartment. We had a lot more living space.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I come from a place that has bush and
space,
outside and like
land,
yeah,
yeah,
like you
land, yeah,
have houses with gardens. So
yeah.
yeah, that kind of the apartment living was really new to us, very very new. It's the
Okay.
first time we'd ever lived in an apartment, and yeah, man, I can't do the apartment. It sucks. It's horrible. I need a little bit of outside. So when we found this place, it was a little bit of compromise. We had to kind of downscale on the actual living space, but
Mm,
having, a relatively decent sized garden, and having our own private outside area. And I think also with where we're staying, because it's like a little, um, like weird little residential area, like just bam in the middle of,
it is.
Paranhos. Like it's very different once you drive in here. It feels very different from like the rest of the areas around us.
Yeah, it
Um,
feels a little like a town almost,
it does, yeah, it
like
feels
a
almost like
little
a little town.
village
Exactly.
town. Hmm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I like it.
but
It's quaint.
yeah, because of that, that was definitely what sold us on it. It's, like cool. We'll lose half of the house and give us more garden. Bring it on.
Yeah, nice. So, what do you all pay in terms of utilities then? Monthly electric, water, since you're living in a house, a semi-detached house.
Um, Look, I mean, funny enough, I feel like we're actually paying a little bit less on our utilities here than what we were in the apartment before. We were staying in Maya,
Okay.
and
Mm,
I think they're like our water, gas, electricity, refuge, all of that. On top of our rents, yeah, man, we were looking at like sort of around I want to say like 1,800 euro mark, and
that was including rent.
Yeah, that was including our rent.
Yeah. Okay.
So we were kind of around that mark, and um, anywhere between there to 2,000. All right, like just depending
Mhm.
on obviously winter or summer, depending on if we're using like the heating or not. Um, and moving to a little freestanding house, we've dropped down to maybe around 1,200 euros a month. Um,
Amazing.
So yeah, I mean, it's, like, call it 700 euros drop. Like,
Yeah.
I'm really happy with that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. What do you all spend then monthly on groceries?
Um, Groceries, I want to say we'll probably look at about like 300 euros if I have to guess, a month
Okay.
roughly on groceries. I mean, take it at,
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
yeah, around about, it can be anywhere between 3 to 400 euros. You know what I mean? If I take it on maybe like 50 euros a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's at least
Okay.
for the necessities and, every like stuff that we always use, sometimes
Yeah.
every now and then it might rise a little bit if you have that odd splurge, where the sweet tooth
Well, if you're
kicks
going to
in.
the South African butcher and you're getting all like the
You know,
specialty things,
exactly. When you feel like a nice curry roll on a Sunday, it's, you need to spend the extra cash.
that's it. Well, cool. At Expats Everywhere, we believe that living abroad transforms lives. How has living abroad transformed your life?
Um, it's transformed my life in quite a way. And definitely for the positive, even though there's always challenges, there's tough things sometimes that you need to be faced with when you move that can sometimes make things a little bit or seem a little bit difficult. Um, it's given me more time with for myself, more time to my family. Uh, it's also helped me um, kind of realize that there's more to life than just the everyday grind. At least with where I've come from, it's you kind of have home and work, and your majority of your time is focused on, I need to work, I need to kind of, get security, I need to, get that good salary, I need to be able to like provide and support. And moving here has the pace has just slowed down. And just seeing like how people live, it's made me so much more appreciative of the time that I have now. I'm not constantly just thinking about work or, just trying to kind of get things done. I've got that part of me now where it's like, you know what, it can wait. Sometimes certain things are a little bit more important. And yeah, that for me is what it's done. It's I think it's given me something, especially with my daughter, that I don't think I would have had in South Africa at all. So I'm
Mhm.
very appreciative of that.
Awesome. Love to hear that. Thanks
Yeah.
so much for your time and meeting with us today.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah. Thank
care.
you for having me.